Great. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it's really a great pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of the World Forum for Ethics in Business and the Art of Living Foundation to what I believe is going to be a wonderful discussion. You know, we do it probably about 26,000 times a day. And obviously without it, we can hardly live a couple of minutes. It directly affects and reflects our emotions. And it was the very first thing we did when we came to this planet. And it's maybe the only way through which we can consciously impact our autonomous nervous system. It's obvious. For us humans, the breath equals life. And it is probably as essential to our life as water is to fish. Yet, the question remains, as researchers say that today we use maybe just about 70% of our lung capacity. Do we really understand and use the power of the breath? Do we make use of this incredible potential which the breath has for us to manage ourselves, to manage our emotions? And I think as this corona pandemic has expanded to what the World Economic Forum has called the world's biggest psychological experiment ever. And as the pandemic has impacted the mental health of people around the world, we would like today learn from experts if something as simple and cost-effective as our own breath could be one of the remedies in the current mental health crisis. So we want to discuss, why are these techniques actually not better known, and as James would say, are maybe a lost art? How can they be so impactful? And where are these techniques already used? What kind of scientific evidence do we have in the world? And how can they be scaled up as a best practice in a global impact? And of course, I think as we have Swamiji with us, it will be great to actually learn some practical tools and techniques today itself. And I'm extremely pleased that we have three absolute experts in the field with us today. I would like to introduce them. We have from the United States, Dr. Emma Seppala. She is the science director at the Stanford Center for Compassion and Altruism. She is a co-director at the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm delighted to be on this panel with James Nestor and Swami Jyotirmaya. In particular, I'm in the middle of James's book, so I'm very excited about the conversation. So I'm going to share my screen with you today so that you can see some of the slides. I'm going to talk briefly today about breathing as a key to emotional intelligence. So one of the biggest challenges I think that we face in our human life is how to handle our emotions. We are constantly, maybe not constantly, in 2020, we're constantly challenged with perhaps a whole array of unpleasant emotions that have arisen, but throughout our life, we encounter moments of great fear, anger, grief, and other sorts of challenging negative emotions that we have to learn how to cope with and how to thrive through and how to acquire resilience amidst that kind of emotional landscape. So just looking at what is emotion regulation. It's the ability to exert control over one's emotional state. So a question that I have for you that you can think about for yourself is, in terms of emotion regulation, what do we learn at home, school, work, in your general environment? What's the general message that you receive from people around you about what to do with your big negative emotions? So I'll just let you think about that for a second. What is the general, most common sort of thing that we are taught? You probably have come up with one of the most common is suppression. What is suppression? Pushing the emotions down, bottling them up, stuffing them in a closet, not showing them, right? Sort of like keep it inside. That is the general message across cultures. Again and again, that is what people answer when I ask this question. So let's think about that a little bit. First of all, how is it working out for you? The answer is probably not that great. But let's look at the data behind emotion regulation and the data behind this technique of suppression that is so commonly used. So suppression, again, is keeping your emotions inside and not showing them on your face and sort of trying to go about your business. So what does the research show? The research actually shows that when you're experiencing a big negative emotion, let's say anger, your physiology gets activated, your fight or flight response is activated, your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate goes up, you start sweating. Your whole nervous system is sort of in this highly negatively aroused sort of space. But what happens when you suppress your emotion, when you just sort of pretend you're not angry? That activation increases all the more. So already anger wreaks havoc on your nervous system. And when you suppress it, all of those systems actually increase. It's like you're taking a bottle and shaking it up, like a soda bottle and shaking it up. And the impact is actually really negative on your health, etc. But the irony here is that why do we suppress? We suppress because we're trying to maintain our relationships with other people, right? We're not going to show that anger because we don't want to negatively impact our relationship. But the research shows that if you tend to suppress in life, your relationships tend to suffer. Why? If I, for example, were experiencing anger right now and I was suppressing it, you watching me, your heart rate would go up. You wouldn't intellectually know why you feel uncomfortable, but suddenly you're feeling uncomfortable around me. So you can see how that leads to impacting relationships, because I think we've all experienced that, where we go in front of someone, we're talking to them, we don't know why, but we don't feel comfortable. Chances are you're registering that inauthenticity, that suppression, and inauthenticity registers as threat. So really a negative impact on our own health, but also on those relationships that we're actually, ironically, trying to maintain by suppression. So what's another technique? Another technique that psychologists have often touted is sort of this cognitive technique of reappraisal, thinking about the situation from a different perspective. For example, you get a parking ticket and you get your car. It's kind of an expensive parking ticket, but then you tell yourself, you know what, I'm just going to consider this a donation to the city. I kind of like the city and now I'm going to get home faster. So you sort of talk your way out of look at things from a different perspective, from a broader perspective, talk your emotion down. And you know what? It works. Research shows it works. But here's the question. What happens when you're having a really strong emotion? We've all been there, really strong emotion. Does that work? When you're really angry or really stressed and someone comes up to you and says, hey, just calm down. Does it work? Are you able to calm down? No, you probably will get upset at that person. In fact, you'll notice it's very difficult to talk your way out of it. Why? This is what's going on. So here, let's look at the brain here. That frontal part of the brain that you're seeing here is responsible for logical thinking, linear thinking, rationality, wisdom. And thanks to that, when all is well, you're able to use reappraisal and sort of talk down those emotion centers that are in the hind parts of the brain. And you're able to talk your way out of that parking ticket. But what happens when you're very stressed, depressed, or your emotion is very, very strong? Those emotion centers take over and you have loss of prefrontal regulation, which is why it's so challenging to think logically when we're in this highly emotional state. So what can we do? That's the big question. That's the $1 million question. So I'm going to share a story with you about this. Jake Doberke was the officer in charge of the last vehicle on a convoy going across Afghanistan. This was about 8 years ago. And he, all the vehicles passed safely, but his drove over an improvised explosive device, over a bomb. And there was a huge explosion. And in that moment, you know, when the dust settled and he could finally see, and he looked down, his legs were almost completely severed below the knee. So you can imagine the pain, the shock, the horror, all of the above. Maybe you probably can't imagine. Hopefully none of us have ever experienced something like this. But in that moment, Jake, by some miracle, he remembered a technique he had learned in a book, a technique for what to do when you're in a time of wartime, sort of a crisis. And it was a breathing technique. A very simple breathing technique. And he started to engage in that breathing technique. And thanks to that, he was able to preserve his state of mind, to stay calm enough to do his active duty, which was to check on the other service members in his vehicle. he had enough presence of mind and calmness to do his second act of duty, which was to give orders to call for help. And he had the presence of mind to remember to tourniquet his own legs and to think of propping them upward before he fell unconscious. Later, he was told he would have died and bled to death if he had not done those things. Why am I sharing this story? Because if breathing can save someone's life in that kind of a critical situation by helping them stay calm and regulate their own emotions, let alone their physical pain, what can it do for the rest of us? And that's been a question that's really motivated me in my own research as a research psychologist. Let's look a little bit at the science behind breathing and emotions in particular. There's a really interesting research study that showed that for every emotion, there's a corresponding rhythm in the breath. And you'll notice this for yourself. When you're stressed, when you're anxious, you'll notice you're breathing more quickly, more shallow. Or if you see little kids in the summer running around in the grass, their little bellies going, there's that happy emotion, that breath is deep into the belly. And laughing is another example. So is sobbing. So here again, this one study had people come into a lab and made them feel different emotions and then saw if each emotion had a different rhythm in the physiology. And they found that, yeah, for every emotion that they researched, there was this sort of footprint or breathing print that corresponded. So that's kind of interesting, but it's what we've noticed in our regular lives as well, right? But the second part of the study, I think, was the most informative. A different group of participants came in and they were given the breathing instructions that corresponded to the emotions as seen in part 1 of the study. So they actually made the participants breathe in those breathing rhythms that corresponded to the emotions. And then they asked them, how do you feel? And what they found, you can imagine what they found, was that as people started breathing in those ways that correspond to the emotions, they started feeling those emotions. So why is this a revolutionary study? It's a revolutionary study because it's very difficult to talk our way out of emotions, but this study suggests we can breathe our way out of emotions into a different kind of state of mind. So we actually looked at a breathing practice as part of a larger study at Yale in this past year. It just got published a couple months ago. And we wanted to look at Yale students over the course of a semester. Their stress tends to increase. They're already a pretty stressed group to begin with, very type A overachiever, intent sort of on proving that their worth in many ways through their achievement. And that's sort of a cult, the overachiever kind of culture, right? So what we wanted to see is, can we help them with mental health and resilience over the course of a semester when stress, anxiety, mental health are impacted and so is burnout, etc. So we looked at 3 different interventions. We looked at a breathing intervention, sky breath meditation. We looked at a mindfulness intervention, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and we looked at an emotional intelligence intervention and a control. So the students were randomly assigned to one of those 4 groups over 8 weeks. And we looked at before and after, compared each of the active groups to the control group, just to see at the end of the semester which group actually was most beneficial. And what we found was that actually the mindfulness intervention had no impact at all. The emotional intelligence had impacted one factor, mindfulness. But the sky breath meditation surpassed the others quite significantly, which was surprising and yet not surprising, because what we saw was that there was improvements in stress, depression, mental health, social connectedness, positive emotion, and mindfulness. And again, so just showing this impact that breathing, this ability to tap right into your physiology, has a sort of profound impact. And interestingly, there was a Harvard study that was published the same month as ours that showed very similar findings comparing the sky breathing meditation to a cognitive control, a cognitive stress management workshop, which is a very nicely designed study. And again, it showed that the sky breath meditation surpassed just a cognitive workshop, and that 3 months later, the effects were actually even stronger. And this study also looked at physiological findings and found that those who had been in the breathing workshop actually showed less stress reactivity before a stressful event in terms of heart rate and so forth. So something that the breathing is doing to the physiology is really leading to that resilience. And finally, another study that we ran several years back with veterans with trauma. So veterans with trauma, you can think of anyone really with post-traumatic stress, tend to have be in this sort of fight or flight mode all the time. So most of us feel stress on a regular basis, but it's almost like they're constantly feeling it, which is why they have trouble sleeping, working, concentrating, maintaining relationships, etc. And so what we wanted to see was, we knew that traditional treatments were not really that effective. And even only 50% of veterans who go through traditional treatments actually see any benefit at all. And so we wanted to see whether through breathing, we can help them tap into the opposite of the fight or flight, the opposite of that sympathetic activation, the parasympathetic. And so the rest or digest that will allow them to sleep and to function normally. And so what you see here in that first bar graph, time one, is in red is the active group, the group that went through the breathing paradigm, and then the blue is the control group that did not. And what we see is at time two, there was a significant reduction in anxiety. And then at time three, which was 1 month after, that improvement was maintained. And at time four, 1 year later, it was maintained. And people often ask, well, did they keep breathing or not during that year? No, most of them did not keep breathing. And yet it sort of had this, that 1 week of breathing had this acute impact on their physiology, allowing them to function again. Many of them no longer qualified as having post-traumatic stress, were able to move on with their lives, said things to us like, thank you for giving me my life back. And were able to sort of continue with their lives, where before they were locked up in their basements, drinking, smoking pot, unable to really function. And then on the right, what you see here is that we looked again physiologically. What you're seeing here in the photograph is that the veteran had sensors around his, he has sensors around his eyes. This is a picture from our study, which was documented in a film called Free the Mind, which is why we have permission to use the pictures here. And what we did was we had the veterans sit in a room that was sort of dark and with bursts of white noise coming in and out at sporadic moments. That would be very mildly annoying to most people who don't have post-traumatic stress. But when you do have post-traumatic stress, that's very shocking and leads to a strong startle response. And what we found was that the veterans, the more they said that they experienced an improvement in anxiety, the more we actually saw that at the physiological level. There's a very strong relationship. So just a couple studies suggesting that breathing really does have, can have a very powerful impact on our ability to manage our emotions and to restore resilience. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Emma. This is truly incredible, the type of research you have conducted. And if I look at what you have just shared on the Stanford research, it almost seems that this 1 week of breathing turned out to be a vaccination for quite a long time, right? Now, from a scientific perspective, Emma, and looking at this Yale study, would you say that then breathing techniques such as the sky breathing would be the ideal first step to experience that inner silence, that mindful state, versus just sitting for a meditation or a mindfulness exercise without breathing techniques first?
Yeah, so I'm obviously a big fan of meditation, but also in this time and age when we are feeling a lot of anxiety, especially right now, and generally, I mean, people's stress levels are really high. Breathing allows you to tap into that parasympathetic nervous system, calming your physiology. So it's probably much easier to meditate. A lot of people will complain that it's very difficult to meditate. It makes me feel more anxious, because when you suddenly just sit down and close your eyes and you have anxiety, you're sort of going to be sitting with that anxiety, and that's very, very uncomfortable. So for a lot of people, especially, I mean, the veterans are an extreme example, but for a lot of people experiencing anxiety, breathing is this great first step to sort of calm down and then move into meditation afterward.
Great. And we'll hear more from you, Emma, later in the discussion. James, it's great that you are with us. James, for all of us to know, is science journalist and the author of a fascinating book called Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art. And when I read that title, I started to go into the YouTube and read, and I literally got lost for an hour or so because it's absolutely intriguing. I think the book explores the million-year-long history of how the human species has lost literally the ability to breathe properly, and why we are suffering from a laundry list of illnesses. And I think, James, you have literally traveled the world in an exciting attempt to figure out what went wrong and how to fix it. And looking forward to hear from you now. And maybe we all first take a long, deep breath in and out, and then are ready to listen to you, James.
Thank you for that introduction. You know, it's great to be here with The Art of Living, considering that they were really my conduit into this research of breathing. About 10 or 11 years ago, I attended an Art of Living introductory class, and then a few weeks later did a follow-up session with Alon Kriya and had this very weird experience. I was sweating a lot. I really felt like I had broken through something, for lack of a better term. And I felt great. And when I went to ask my doctor and other people in the medical field what had happened, they didn't know. So as a science journalist, I wasn't sure what to do with that experience. I wasn't going to write a memoir about it. But it was really until I met freedivers that I discovered the true potential of breathing. I'm going to share some slides with you now. One moment. Okay. So this was really a second jumping off point for me when I was sent by Outside Magazine to write about the World Freediving Championship. And I saw people who had mastered the art of breathing so well that they could hold their breath for 7, 8, 9 minutes at a time and dive down to 300 or 350 feet without any fins on, without anything. So they told me that doing this by mastering the art of breathing, you could do a lot of things beyond just diving down deep. You could dive with face-to-face with sharks. You could dive with dolphins. If you were lucky enough, you could
James,
dive. Yes.
May I ask, could you share your full screen? At the moment, we see 2 pictures always. I think that would be.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sure how that happened. One moment. Probably looking at my notes there. I'll try to share again. And let's try this. One moment, please. So are you still seeing 2 pictures?
No, it's just perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Beautiful picture.
Zoom, modern age, virtual age, these things come up. But moving on here. So sometimes you can dive with giant sperm whales. But when I asked the freedivers how they were able to do what they did, they said it was easy. The only thing we really needed to do was to learn this art of breathing. And not only could it allow us to dive very deep in the ocean, to dive with dolphins and whales, but we could also use it to heal ourselves and to heat ourselves. And as a journalist, this sounded crazy to me. They told me about some guy who had been shot up with E. coli and breathed in these rhythmic patterns to fight off the endotoxin and not suffer any of the symptoms. They told me about an 80-year-old who had overcome chronic lung inflammation and other diseases by just breathing. And now he was able to sit in the snow for hours at a time and not get cold. So of course that sounds insane. But I went out into the field and I started talking to experts. I started talking to scientists, and I found that so many of these claims were 100% correct. We take about 30 pounds of air in and out of our bodies every single day. So it's far more than we eat or drink. And how we take that air in, how we exhale it, plays such a huge part in our health, in our lifespan, and in our happiness. So breathing really was this missing pillar of health. These experts also told me something else, that most of us are breathing incorrectly, inadequately. So all you have to do is really look at the data here. In the US, about 9 to 10% of the population has asthma, 7% has COPD, 20% has sleep apnea, 50% snore. So all of these breathing issues can cause a whole bunch of problems. They can increase your risk of a stroke, lead to ADHD, even lead to diabetes, which was complete news to me. So instead of dwelling on the real negative stuff here, my interest in going into this field and researching was to find out what was broken so that we could find out how to fix it best. And that's what I spent several years doing, working with various doctors, working for months in medical libraries in an attempt to learn how we can breathe correctly and what that can do for us. And here is a very quick cliff-noted version of what I learned. First of all, breathe through your nose, and breathe through your nose all the time. So the nose is not some random appendage on our faces. It heats air, it moistens air, it pressurizes air, and it conditions it so that by the time it enters our lungs can more easily extract oxygen. So here's another view of this amazing organ. About 25 to 50% of the population now habitually breathes through its mouth, so they are not getting any of the benefits of nasal breathing. And nasal breathing is even associated with better memory function, relaxes the nervous system, increases circulation. We get 20% more oxygen through breathing through the nose than we do equivalent breaths through the mouth, which is just incredible. This is what the sinuses look like in front of your face. So it takes up about the volume of a billiard ball, all those sinuses, which is fascinating and quite beautiful. So the second step here is slow your breathing down. Now, I'm not talking about when you're doing pranayama, when you're doing Sudarshan Kriya, when you're doing breathing exercises, then it's perfectly fine. That's like going to a gym. You're restoring your respiratory health, you're balancing your nervous system by doing these different breathing practices. I'm talking about during the rest of the day, when you're sitting in front of your computer, when you're walking around, when you're sitting around the house, which is what most of us are doing in the world right now. So about 20 years ago, some Italian researchers started studying the Ave Maria, the prayer cycle of the Rosary, Catholic prayer cycle in Latin. And they noticed that it took about the same amount of breaths per minute to recite the Ave Maria, because it's a priest recites one message and then the congregation recites it back to them. And this was the same as the Buddhist mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. So it was the same respiratory rate. They thought, oh, that was interesting. It was about 5 to 6 seconds inhale, and then 5 to 6 seconds to recite the prayer. So then they started looking at other prayers. They looked at Satanama from Kundalini Yoga. They looked at Om. And all of these prayers locked into that same respiratory rate. So they gathered a group of subjects and they placed sensors all over their bodies. And they noticed that when people recited these prayers, didn't matter if it was the Ave Maria, didn't matter if it was the Buddhist chant, didn't matter if it's Kundalini chant or Om, their heart rate lowered, their oxygen in their brain increased, their blood pressure decreased, and more extraordinarily, all the systems of their bodies entered into something called a state of coherence. So that graph above shows how the heart reacts when we're angry, when we're not focused, and below is when we start appreciating things, we start having gratitude. But you can enter into that state of coherence just by breathing at a slow rhythmic pattern of about 5 to 6 breaths per minute. So the brain waves, arterial blood pressure waves, heart rate go from looking like this to looking like this. So since then, various doctors, various psychiatrists have been using this slow rhythmic rate to help people with anxiety, depression, even 9/11 survivors. So it's so simple, yet so powerful. And this is really all it is. You just inhale at this rate and exhale. And a couple of years ago, researchers at Northwestern University found that breathing in this rhythmic pattern also coordinates electrical activity in the areas of the brain, the piriform cortex, hypothalamus, amygdala, that control things like smell, memory, and emotions. So we can literally change the way we think, the emotional centers in our brain, just by breathing in different ways, which is fantastic considering that breathing is free. So the last thing I'm going to cover here is just general awareness. So we can't control directly our liver function, our kidney function, our stomachs, but we can control our breathing. And when we control our breathing, we can influence all of these functions. I found several extraordinary tales. I couldn't believe this stuff. And I couldn't believe that so few people have heard about it, of a researcher who helped people with emphysema better than any other treatment. He taught them how to breathe properly. That was the patient before and after, simply learning how to breathe properly. Because if you have emphysema, you're all breathing into your chest, you're lengthening those breaths, taking slower and easy breaths, restored this person completely. And it helped hundreds of other people at VA hospitals throughout the 50s and 60s. I also learned something else that just blew my mind, is that you can use breathing to heat your body up. So Tumo monks have been doing this for thousands of years. And scientists and other travelers to India and Nepal and Tibet came back with these stories of, there's these monks and they can sit in the snow for hours at a time and not get cold and not wear anything, which of course, as Western scientists, we say that's impossible. So finally, a Harvard medical researcher, Herbert Benson, went to India and found these guys and placed sensors all over their bodies and found that yes, just through breathing and through meditation, they were able to keep their bodies warm and reduce their metabolic rates at the same time, which to us doesn't make any sense. Usually you need more oxygen to increase your metabolic rate, to increase heat. They're doing the exact opposite thing. So they can sit in cold conditions for hours at a time, not get frostbite, not get hypothermia, focusing on their breath. So Wim Hof, you might have heard of him. He's a sort of a new version of these Tumo monks. He sat in an ice bath for about 2 hours. So, and he didn't suffer from hypothermia. He didn't suffer from any frostbite. He got up and walked away. And he did this by focusing on his breath. But of course, these methods have been around for thousands and thousands of years. The earliest yoga dates back 4,000, 5,000 years to the Indus civilization. And after that, it was refined. People added more methods to it. Here's some alternate nostril breathing, as many of you are well aware of. But at the same time, this research was happening in ancient Chinese medicine. So the Chinese called their breathwork system Qigong, Qi meaning breath and Gong meaning work, put together breathwork. And they wrote 7 books about this. And I read these books. Luckily, they were translated, about all of the bad things that are going to happen to your body if you breathe incorrectly, and all the wonderful things and all the long life and health you're going to celebrate if you breathe correctly. So breathing was absolutely essential to their health. And one quote from the Tao reads, "Therefore, the scholar who nourishes his life refines the form and nourishes his breath." Isn't this evident? And I think it's becoming a lot more evident today. I've seen in the past few years, I've spent about 4 to 5 years in the researching of breathing and talking with scientists. And it seems that so many people are now really tuning into, we're finding that breathing, just like Emma reported, is having clear, measurable benefits for people. And it's wonderful to see so many scientists now getting interested in this wonderful free thing that we can all do. And the more we understand, appreciate, and practice healthy breathing, the more we can use our natural bodies to lessen the symptoms, and in some extraordinary cases, to really heal ourselves of so many chronic maladies. So thank you very much. I will pass over the mic back to you, Christoph.
Thanks a lot, James. And I think in these couple of minutes, you took us really on an incredible journey around the world. And I think what unites us all around the world is the fear from COVID-19. We need to deal with this disease. And obviously, you have pointed out that breathing techniques can boost our immune system. Do you see here, maybe at this point, the breath work to play a certain role for us to boost the immune system?
Absolutely. I've talked to several researchers who said this is the quickest way of reducing inflammation. Diet helps, exercise helps, of course they do. But by breathing, you can switch yourself from a sympathetic state, which is an inflamed state, to a parasympathetic state by just breathing slowly. And I've seen this. I have borderline higher blood pressure. I can breathe at that rate of about 5 to 6 breaths per minute and watch my blood pressure go down 10 to 15 points. And I'm not different than anyone else. So another thing I want to mention about COVID is Dr. Luis Ignaro, who won the Nobel Prize for his work with nitric oxide, believes that just breathing through the nose, because we produce a lot of nitric oxide here, which interacts directly with viruses, can help inhibit a large viral load of COVID getting into us. So it may be able to protect us. This is our first line of defense. So we should all be nasal breathing all the time.
Super. Thank you. Thank you so much. James, we'll come back to you in the discussion. We would now like to hear from Swami Jyotirmaya. Swamiji is an international director and in fact a board member of the International Art of Living Foundation, the organization founded by Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. And of course, Swamiji is loved by thousands and thousands around the world. He's a great trainer in meditation and breathing techniques. So Swamiji, you have traveled across the globe in your efforts to build a stress-free, violence-free society, to spread the message of the art of living and Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. And I think what I have noticed seeing you and seeing you in your work is that not only you teach the breathing and you teach other people to find inner calm, but you really embody that. I think you're walking that talk. And it would be so interesting to hear from you what has actually brought you to understand and experience the power of breath, the power of meditation, and what is your experience with it, sharing it with thousands?
Thank you so much, Christoph-ji, for a wonderful introduction. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, James. So let us close our eyes for a moment and breathe out and relax. Relax your body and relax your mind. And take a long, deep breath in, the very first act we all did it in our life. And slowly breathe out, the last act we do in our life. Our life is in between these two breaths. Breathe in again, little more attention to your breath, nostrils. And again, slowly with a gentle smile, breathe out. You are grateful for this breath. Without breath, there is no life. Breathe in with a smile. And very slowly breathe out. And continue 2 more times. And now slowly you may open your eyes. Whenever we start any action or any job, better to keep our eyes closed for a few moments and take 2-3 long deep breaths. Then the chattering mind, the noisy mind become more and more silent. Then we become more focused. Life is a play of energy. If our energy is very high, physically and mentally, we appreciate our life more. We celebrate our life. But the same energy, the prana goes down, the doubts comes, fear comes. And we just exist. We are not really living. So both our speakers mentioned, if you are not breathing deep enough, we cannot really use our potential. So the power of breath, I have been with Art of Living Foundation now more than 2 decades, founder Holiness Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar ji. I have been teaching this Art of Living Happiness program, Sudarshan Kriya, the sky breathing meditation, more than 20 years now, all over the world. So 2 months ago, I got a very surprise call from one of the most famous singer from Europe. She came to know about Art of Living sky breathing meditation. So she called and she said, can you teach me this program? So I said, we can do online now because of this COVID-19 situation. But she insisted me, no, I really want to do offline program. And it's allowed to do it now here in Germany. So we did the program. And after the very first session of sky breathing, she opened her eyes and she said, I had been searching for this for many, many years in my life because she was suffering something with her vocal cord. It started affecting her performance. Whenever she sings, 15, 20,000 people attend her concerts. So after learning this, last 2 months, nearly 2 months, she has been practicing every single day this breathing meditation sky. And she's saying, my quality of my performance is totally changed. Thanks to this knowledge, thanks to this breathing workshop. So, especially the breathing meditation, which we teach in Art of Living, it's a very rhythmic breathing. It really helps you to get rid of all kinds of stress and tension. And this happened 2 months ago. And one thing very touched, or it was a turning point in my life, spiritual life. It was in my small hometown in India. I was very young once I started teaching Art of Living program. I was really young. And I was teaching many small towns, villages. Once I was in one village, I taught this program for 60 to 70 people. Those times, it's late 90s. And that time it was like 6 days program we had. And after the program, I came back to my home and I got a call from one of the participants. And she called me. It was like 10 in the night, 10:30 in the night. And she said, I really want to thank you for these wonderful days in my life. I said, we already expressed our thanks. She said, no, you are listening my voice because of this program, the breathing technique you taught us. Then I asked her, what happened to you? Tell me. And she said, do you know my husband attend this program? We never thought we are going to attend this program. The very first day of the happiness program, we never know about Art of Living, the spiritual path, and they decided to commit suicide because they went through a very tough financial crisis and they had 3 children. So their plan was to kill these 3 children because they don't have anything to survive. So they planned to kill these 3 children and kill themselves. Sometimes the invisible energy, the divine power, we don't know how the message comes. And one messenger, she went there and told them, you come to this program, you no need to register, you no need to pay any money course, we just come and attend the program. Fortunately, this husband and wife, they came and sat in this program and they did the meditation and the Sudarshan Kriya breathing technique. That's opened up something in their life, new dimension. They got the courage. So the breathing technique, not only the physical level, it will give you so much clarity and courage in your life to, again, if your prana is very high, most of the problem in our life gets solved by itself. I'm seeing this transformation more than 20 years in my life. So if we can give little attention to our breath, it's make wonders in our life. So after many, many years, I met this family again. Once I was in my hometown, many people came to share their joy, and they came, and this husband and wife came and told me, are you remembering us? We are the people done the program with you 22 years ago. Now my son grown up and he's working in a MNC, and we have everything in our life now. Thank you. So breath can give you the life, and breath can kill you also if you're not breathing deep enough, you're not breathing correctly. So these are the words from me. Then after some time, we'll do a breathing technique and we'll meditate. Over to you, Christoph.
Thanks a lot, Swamiji. This is what an experience you are sharing. And indeed, breath can save our life. The absence of it can kill us. And I was just thinking, while you were saying that, imagine all the fish in the waters, they would unite and hold a conference on the importance of water. We wouldn't probably expect them to do that because it's so vital. They know they can't live without it. And so for us, actually, probably as humans, it should be also evidently clear that the breath is life and we need to honor it. Yet it seems almost that we need to convince each other, and scientists like James, like Emma, experts like you, Swamiji, need to go and convince people to kind of make use of this tool. And I wonder, of course, the yogis knew that this is powerful, but what is your thought, Swamiji? How come that this art has been lost?
There are many, many reasons actually. Sometimes, the knowledge goes, sometimes get diluted. But fortunately, Art of Living volunteers and teachers, they're doing this, conducting the various programs across the globe. And again, educate people. You are suffering physically. Most of the cases, I can give you thousands of examples, especially in Europe, how just one or two sessions of Sudarshan Kriya, the breathing technique, how they can open up and they can come out from a lot of misery from their life. Yeah.
Thanks, Swamiji. Emma, what I wanted to ask you, you're obviously at the core of the educational system in the United States. And I remember when I was invited to deliver a program on leadership and well-being at the Harvard Business School, the students came in the break and they said, Christoph, we know everything about leadership. We come from great families. We are well taken care. We have a bright future. But there's one thing we feel we can't handle. There's one thing we don't know how to deal with. And they said it's the mind. We don't know how to switch off in the night. We don't know how to kind of switch on when we need to concentrate and focus. So how do you see the situation at the moment? Is there more kind of buy-in? Is there more usage of these great techniques in universities in the United States, for example? Or is there still some work and education to be done?
Well, I think what we're seeing is that both at the level of in schools and in businesses, there's this sort of idea that in order to get things done, you have to be always busy, always working, and sort of in a stress mode. Like people complain about stress, but they also worship at the temple of stress. The idea that, okay, I need to get things done, so I need to drink more coffee and overschedule myself and wait till the last minute to get things done. That's definitely sort of the mentality in the US about productivity, but I think also in Europe to some extent. So that's sort of what's in the air, and it's completely false. I mean, if you look at the research, you're going to be more productive if you're more focused, if you're more in the present moment. You're going to be more creative and innovative, which is what everybody wants, which is the number one trait that leaders look for in incoming employees is creativity. Of course, you have to innovate beyond the competition. But we know that in order to innovate, your brain needs to be in alpha wave mode, which is in a relaxed but alert state. And yet, you're not going to be creative when you're sitting at your computer sweating in this high stress mode. So really, the philosophy that is sort of the norm around how to function, how to work at your best in terms of always being in this stressed mode is completely false when you look at the data. And so, but I also think people are realizing that 50% of employees are burnt out, 75% of employees are disengaged at work. There's a problem with how we're working. There's a problem with how stressed our youth is. And it doesn't have to be that way. And actually, if people tap into their parasympathetic system more, if they're calmer and therefore able to see things from a broader perspective, like Swamiji was saying, when you're calmer, you're able to think more broadly. So I think people are hungry for a different way of living, because what's going on right now it's not sustainable. It's not working.
Right. So there you're almost, it seems, calling for a paradigm shift. So for high performance, we don't need to be just let's say in alert mode, but also relaxed. So would you say that breathing techniques can bring us in that so-called flow state then, which increases productivity?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Relaxed is the key state. And it's interesting because I teach leaders all the time. And whenever I ask them, what is the ideal state, no matter if you're going on a first date or an interview for a job, or you just want to come home and be with your family, with your children, what's the ideal state? Everybody answers calm and relaxed. Like intuitively, we know that, even though we're not living that way. But yes, so absolutely, that is something that people are looking for. And now I forgot your question. What was your other question again?
There is, for example, McKinsey published a piece of research saying that when their top performer were in a flow state, they were 5 times more productive.
Oh, yeah.
We know it is very difficult to get in the flow state. So what is the role of breath work here to get in a flow state?
Got it. Yeah. So I would argue that right now, we live in a world where we value efficiency. The fastest way for you to calm down in the most efficient and effective way is through your breath, right? Just exhaling more slowly than you inhale, you're calming your heart rate and blood pressure in minutes. The veterans that I worked with, they came into our study and they were, really not into yoga breathing, like hippy dippy, stuff. And they really, but they have a show me attitude. So when they came in, they didn't believe it was going to work, but then within minutes, they saw that they could calm themselves down with breathing. So that's what's so nice about breathing, is that you don't have, with meditation, which of course is wonderful too, you kind of see the effect over time, but with breathing within minutes, you're like, okay, this works. Like, I know it. And I think we're all looking for quick, efficient tools at this time and age. So.
Absolutely. And in preparation, I was thinking I'm going to ask you all these scientific questions, and then I decided to actually ask you also a personal question, if I may. And I wanted to start with you, James. Obviously, you're very busy, you're very successful in your profession, and then you also shared that you personally benefit from the breathing technique. So, could you kind of share with us, how do you make use of these techniques? How does it look like in a day in your life? Do you practice on a daily basis or once in a week? And how do you benefit from it personally?
So a lot of people think that since I spent years studying breathing and the science of breathing and wrote this book, that I'm now the best breather in the world, which is 100% not true at all. So I'm still on my own journey. I've gotten a lot better from where I was before, and I've got CAT scans and other data to prove that I've actually changed my airway health just by breathing in a different way. But I think the important thing is while you're researching this, even if you're being an objective journalist, you can't help that, seeing the transformative effect that breathing is having on people. It doesn't matter if you're talking to asthmatics, people with anxieties, people with mental health issues, fear-based disorders. I mean, across the board, I was just absolutely blown away by interviewing dozens and dozens of people who have completely transformed their life through nothing more than breathing. So, there's, after a while, you think, wow, maybe I can improve my life with these things as well. So I was lucky enough to do a bunch of research at Stanford, looking at the difference in the way in which we inhale air, either through the nose or the mouth, all the problems associated with the mouth, the hint don't be breathing through the mouth, people. Be breathing through the nose. That is the nutshell of what we discovered. But we didn't really discover it. That knowledge has been around for a long time. We just found more data to support it. But throughout the day, I've noticed exactly what Emma was saying. I open my inbox in the morning and there's 50 emails. I need to get back to everyone in an hour. And I just get so stressed. And as I have all these instruments around the house, so I would put on a pulse oximeter and notice what would happen to, and also our heart rate variability monitor, and notice how dysfunctional my breathing was, how dysfunctional my heart would be beating, what an inadequate state my brain would be in, just by entering that state of stress. So the first thing I do in the morning now is when I open the email, which is always something I don't really look forward to, I take a few very soft and very slow breaths. And then I open it, and then I can focus a lot more and be a lot more reasoned, as Emma was saying as well. When we're completely stressed and when our emotions take over, we're not thinking logically. And so you want to be, there's nothing wrong with working at peak states, at peak performance, of being a high achiever, but you want to be able to do this for years and years at a time. You don't want to be able to do it for a year and then be completely burnt out. And I think that breathing is this wonderful anchor that I refer to throughout the day. Writing a book about breath and spending 4 years makes you a bit of a neurotic on how you're breathing. But eventually some of these things become a habit. I notice it when I'm walking. I notice it when I'm surfing, notice it when I'm exercising. This is something we carry with us all day. And so it's wonderful that we can help form this and actually change the way our bodies work and our brains function just by breathing.
I think that's a great tip. So when we open the laptop, see the emails, taking a couple of long, deep breaths in and out. Doesn't take time. Surely very, very beneficial. Emma, I know that you have kids. Obviously, you're professionally very much engaged. Is there a place for active breathing every day for you, or how do you make use of that? Can you share your recipe?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I probably, if I didn't have breathing, I don't know how I would actually parent. Even my husband, he learned breathing, exercise, sky breath meditation, but wasn't practicing. But after we had kids, he realized he's got to start to stay that way in order for us to function at our best and to be our best selves with the children. I actually got inspired to do breathing research. I was in New York. I moved to New York 2 days before 9/11. And after that, I had crazy amounts of anxiety every morning at 8:30 a.m. And I tried meditation. It wasn't really popular yet in the US anyway, but I really tried hard. I did, whatever I could, mindfulness. I went to every Tibetan teacher that came through New York, and I really loved how I felt around it. But I just couldn't get to that space of tranquility because I think I was just in such a sort of fight or flight all the time due to the events and stuff. So it was actually the breathing that really helped me when I learned the sky breath meditation, which inspired me then to do research on that technique for veterans with high anxiety, and then and now for the Yale students and so forth. So it's very much a personal experience that led to that. But I want to share another sort of fun experience I had with a fellow neuroscientist at Stanford during my graduate program. He was looking at real-time fMRI, which is basically you put people into an fMRI scanner and you have them look at these negative images, sort of violence or something like that, to sort of trigger the negative emotion parts of the brain so that then he can then tell you what to do. And he had me and a friend of mine come in, and some other people. And then after a while, he just kind of kicked us out of the scanner, and he said, "I can't work with you guys." And I was like, "Why?" And he said, "Well, as soon as you see the image, you do something with your breathing. And then it doesn't, I guess we didn't activate the parts of the brain he wanted us to activate." So but I didn't realize it wasn't conscious. So as James was saying, I think when you do these exercises a lot, they sort of kick in unconsciously when you're maybe triggered by a negative thing, and then you're sort of automatically regulating in some manner. Again, this was just, a couple of us, an observation that he saw. But I thought that was kind of interesting that, just like anything that you practice frequently, then it'll sort of kick in unconsciously when needed, perhaps.
Yes, absolutely. And we have thousands of viewers from around the world watching this discussion. And Swamiji, I think many would like to now experience a guided mindfulness technique or a breathing technique. So Swamiji, could you take us through that?
Yeah, yes, sure. So first we will do one quick breathing technique, pranayama. Loose fist and relax your shoulders. Keep your hands like this, elbows close to your body. And what we do, James mentioned we have to nasal breathing is the best. So we breathe and breathe out through our nostrils. Breathe in and we have to throw our hands all the way up and you have to open your fingers and breathe out and drop your hands back. The same. Like this, breathe in and breathe out. Shall we do together? I will count, you can do. 1 or 2 times you can keep your eyes closed. Take a long deep breath in and breathe out completely. Now we do together with enthusiasm. In, out, in, out. Eyes closed. In, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, 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 and relax. Keep your eyes closed and observe the sensations and observe the beautiful energy flow in your body. And we do one more round. Loose fist, shoulders relaxed. And sit straight, spine erect. And with a smile, take a long deep breath in. And relax. Now together. In, out, in, out. And continue. And relax. Observe the breath. Observe the heartbeat. And we'll do a short meditation now. Relax your shoulders. And relax your eyebrows. Meditation is not concentrating something. Meditation is just relaxation. During the silence, different kinds of thoughts do come. Let them all come and go. Do not resist to stop any thoughts. And take a long, deep inhalation. And let go. Place your entire body weight on the seat where you are sitting. Drop your body weight and gentle smile on your face. You are the source of joy. Once again, take another breath in and hold the breath. And breathe out very slowly. Become aware of your surroundings, the place where you are sitting now. The entire room, the wall, floor, empty space above your head. Now listen to the noises, good sound, disturbing noise. Now slowly take your attention to your body. Relax all the muscles in your body. Breathe in, relax more. Once your body relaxes, awareness expands, mind expands. Take your attention to your right leg. Right foot, knee, thigh muscles, left leg, abdomen, and relax your stomach muscles, navel region. And take another smooth, gentle breath in And with a smile, breathe out and relax your stomach muscles. Chest, right arm, elbow, palm, fingers, left arm, relax your shoulders, neck, throat, lips, eyes, the whole body. If you have any pain or any tension in your body, slowly take your attention to that particular part of your body. Shoulder pain or any restlessness in your body. And feel that pain or uneasiness. Keep your attention to that particular part of your body. Stomach, lower back, keep your attention there and take a long deep breath in very slowly. Breathe out. After every exhalation, you are getting more relief from the pain. Take 3 more breaths, slow and deep. Breathe in, fill your lungs with the breath. Breathe out. Continue 2 more times. And if you have any pain in any other part of your body, gently take your attention there and do the same. Take 3, 4 long deep breaths and relax. Not in a hurry. long, deep breaths. Every incoming breath energizes our body. Outgoing breath gives relaxation, relief. Breathe in again. Hold the breath. Slowly release. Now let go all your efforts and relax. Next 2 minutes, be with yourself, doing nothing. Listen to the inner silence. Abide in yourself. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Let there be a peace in our life and in our surroundings. And then let there be a peace in the whole world. Breathe in and breathe out. Listen to the sounds. Become aware of your surroundings, the place where you are sitting now. Keep a smile on your face and become aware of your body. You are joy with a smile. Breathe in and breathe out. And you may crack open your eyes, just 2%, very little. The ray of light again entering to your eyes. And open little more. Now you are aware of your surroundings, your body. And slowly you may open your eyes. Take your time. And feel the difference before the meditation. How was our state of mind? After meditation, how is our state of mind? Yes, Krishna.
Thanks a lot, Swamiji, and I think I can truly feel a difference in my state of mind. I'm sure all of you viewing as well. And Swamiji, Emma, James, I was reminded of my very first meditation I ever did. That's about 26 years ago. And at that time, I was not sensitive enough to feel a difference. So I had done a meditation workshop, thought I didn't feel much. And in the evening, I had to take care of the 2 kids of my sister. They were very small. And usually when I had to take care of them, it was very difficult for me because they will run in all different directions and I didn't know how to catch hold of them. And in anticipation of another evening, which will be overwhelming, I drove there with my bicycle. Now, once I arrived after a day of breathing and meditation, I was so amazed because both of them very quietly, for the first time ever, sat on my laps and smiled at me. And it was then that I realized that the peace within myself actually had an influence on the others. And they were more sensitive than me at this point of time. So what you were saying very much resonated with me, Swamiji, that the peace within us helps also for peace in the society, in the world. And I think, Emma, that is what science you have shared with us is confirming. And I wanted to ask to conclude to all the 3 of you, if now those of us watching this discussion are inspired to maybe take a next step and maybe just a micro step to integrate breathing in their lives, what could be a reasonable next step? Who would like to go first?
I think a great step would be that every Zoom conference call ends with a meditation like that. Wouldn't that be I'd really be looking forward to these all day. That was wonderful. It reminds me, 11 years ago, 10 years ago, I had my first sky meditation, and this is something I try to practice at least once a week. I know I should do it more. I'm trying. But it's a wonderful way of regrounding you into your environment and into your body, and just following your breath as that anchor. So I think that's a good one to do, and breathing slowly and rhythmically the rest of the time can really have a huge benefit as well.
That's great indeed. Thanks, James. Emma, what would you say could be a first step?
I mean, I think what Swamiji was saying too really reminded me of, the state of our life depends on the state of our mind. So, everything, you could be in the middle of a pandemic, but if your mind is okay, everything is okay. Or you could be on a beach in Hawaii, and if you're upset, it doesn't matter that you're on the beach in Hawaii. So just, that awareness that what are we doing? What habits are we taking to take care of the state of our mind? And breathing is just one of the most profound. I mean, like James said, the sky breath meditation is so powerful. And then being aware of, when you lengthen your exhales, you're going to calm down your mind. You can do that when you're in a conference call. You can do that while you're driving, and just sort of tapping into that calming response that brings you into the present, and that allows you to have a better state of mind to show up as your best self.
Great, thanks, Emma. And Swamiji, what would be your suggestion?
I would suggest you to practice breathing technique called Sky, Sudarshan Kriya. You become more natural. You always feeling at home. You are relaxed, inner peace, you experience inner peace. At the same time, you have to be very dynamic in your life. So which, Krishnavji, which you mentioned, the same thing, I was so lazy 22 years ago. Now my day starts 3:30 in the morning till 10:30. I really works every single day. Every single day. 3:30 I'm up. Because once you start practicing 30 minutes of breathing technique, give you a lot of energy. We are talking about the pandemic lockdown. I was locked up in the country called Lithuania for 7-8 months. So I was quite busy with the teaching meditation. At the same time, I thought I had to do something creative. So I started learning Lithuanian language. For what? But I learned the Lithuanian language. I went to the university. I appeared in the exam. Even I learned their constitution, Lithuanian constitution, and written only in Lithuanian language in 7-8 months' time. So this is not only just peace, it's really give you blossom your all the talents which you have, and more intuition, innovation, and more intelligence in your life. So start doing the breathing meditation. Thank you.
Oh, that's truly impressive to learn the language in just a couple of months. And thanks for this. With that, we come to the end. I would very much, on behalf, I think, of all of us viewing this, like to thank the speakers, Emma, James, Swamiji, for taking your time and sharing your wisdom, your learning with all of us. I also would like to thank the organizers for making this possible, Pia and Jack from the Art of Living in Sweden, and Ewald and Kirsten from our WFB team in Brussels. Thanks a lot for making this possible. It was for me very enriching to talking to you, and all the best. Stay healthy. Thank you.